Well, South Africans have been urged to bury their deceased loved ones within a space of 4 days. This comes, of course, as load shedding continues to pose a challenge to mortuaries. Industry bodies have said that load shedding added by the heat wave has put a strain on funeral parlors and argue that it saves families money. Well, for more on this, we speak to the National Funeral Directors Association of Southern Africa, Dr. Lawrence Konyana. Dr. Konyana, thank you so much for your time and thank you for joining us on our platform this morning. Very quickly, perhaps if you could just give us a snapshot of what the situation really is in our mortuaries while South Africa is in the grips of this energy crisis and this ongoing heat wave.
Good morning to you and good morning to your listeners and your viewers. Yes, it's quite a difficult situation, and the heat wave hasn't helped that much. It has made the situation worse. Obviously, the rising cost of fuel as well.
Dr. Konyana, are you still with us?
Yes, I'm still with you. Can you hear me?
Yes, please continue.
I'm saying yes. The heat wave hasn't helped that much, and also the load shedding has affected many businesses, requiring that most of the day you run your fridges with the use of a generator. So this obviously rises the costs, as the diesel costs have gone up, petrol costs have gone up, meaning that your generator has to run longer than usual. And in most cases, in our cases, most bodies are buried within about a week, 7 days. Hence the call from many of our colleagues that if we could have burials happening within short of space of time, that could alleviate some of the problems. Not that it will alleviate it completely, because there's a multiple of other things involved. For instance, every time there's load shedding, there's no cell phone signal in certain areas. This results in delay of removing the deceased from a home, especially those ones who passed away at home. And we know that happens as soon as a person dies. So it's got a multiple of problems.
Yeah. I mean, you'll have some families who will argue that you as a service provider have the duty and the responsibility to provide said service, and that, putting a request on the family to try and speed up their own sort of grieving and burial processes may, in fact, be an unfair call to make. What's your response to those individuals?
Indeed, we have an obligation to deliver quality service. Hence, we even abide by the law, which requires that we have an alternative, which is the use of generators to drive refrigeration. But I think, like I said, there is other multiple challenges. There's also delays in home affairs in terms of death registrations, especially in those periods where we have load sheddings. And the law requires us, as funeral industry, to keep generators, to have some kind of alternative form of energy to make sure that our businesses are running. Unfortunately, this also means the rise in costs of funerals, which is probably there, or it's very eminent if most of the funeral directors haven't increased their prices. Also, the manufacturers as well, manufacturers of coffins and caskets, they are also getting affected. The prices are going up. So what it will result in, it will result in cost of funerals going forward. Hence, sometimes the longer the body takes for the body while it's not buried, the more cost might be incurred.
Yeah. As an association, I wonder if you can also just give us a window into the state of the industry as it contends with this load shedding crisis, because we know that a number of small businesses have in fact been severely impacted by the load shedding. Some have even gone under as a result of the load shedding. What's the situation in the industry right now? Are parlors in the country sort of being able to bear the burden of load shedding? Are they surviving this crisis that we're under, which we're being told is likely to be around for the next 2 years or so?
Look, as I've alluded earlier, the law requires that we have measures in place for such things as load shedding. And those reputable funeral parlors, and most of our members have generators within their premises. They make sure that the cooling happens throughout. Hence, most of them are affected by just the rising cost, but in terms of operation, they are trying everything together as it is.
All right. Just on this call for families to try and bury their loved ones using a far more expedited schedule, are you finding that, clients of yours are complying with this particular call, or is there any sort of resistance?
Well, most families do comply, and I must say also, sometimes even removing the deceased from the state mortuaries, we find it in a bad state. And hence we do engage with the family and inform them of such, hence encourage them perhaps maybe to bury a bit quicker, depending on the state of the body.
Yeah. I mean, are there any other interventions that you are hoping could be of assistance, perhaps interventions from the state, for instance, because this is a major service that you are supplying to South Africans who have lost their loved ones, the ability to bury them with dignity and grace. Are there perhaps means and ways in which the state could assist? This is not the first time that your industry has been afflicted by factors outside of your control. We saw at the height of the COVID-19 pandemic, when the death tally was at its highest, funeral parlors were completely inundated with the deceased. And I wonder if, since then, up until now, have you been able to foster some sort of engagements or relations with the state to alleviate some of the pressures that the industry itself is going under?
Yes, there are some alternatives that we are considering as the industry. For example, we are encouraging our members to turn to embalming as one form of preserving the body. Because if embalming is done as soon as the body is received in the funeral home, it could be embalmed, and this may reduce person. So what we seek is try and get our work staff, our employees, and the industry as a whole personalized and get training to make sure that they can do this process hygienically and in a safe environment. One of the other options is perhaps for government to consider some kind of a rebate on the use of generators or alternative sources of energy.
Yeah,
especially for the funeral industry.
Yeah, but Dr. Konyana, what is the plan, though, I think, just in closing? Because when we look, honestly, when we look ahead, it does seem as though load shedding is here to stay. Fine, the heat wave is not a factor that will be compounding matters for much longer. We know that that is more transitory. But load shedding is a problem that is likely to be here for a long time. You've mentioned the alternatives that you would like your clients to start looking into. But as an industry, what is your plan moving forward to ensure that the industry remains sustainable, remains viable, and is able to weather this load shedding storm, so to speak?
I think one of the things is make sure that our members make sure that the lights are still on by the use of generators or solar power, and also going into an extent of encouraging families to allow them to do embalming, because that's one of the alternatives that we could still keep the body from decomposing faster.
All right, Dr. Konyana, thank you so much for your time. That is the National Funeral Directors Association of Southern Africa, Dr. Lawrence Konyana, talking to us there about this growing problem that they're facing as an industry, the issue of load shedding, heat wave, making it very difficult for them to continue with their work.